After taking a look at you, the plaintiff, and seeing who the defendant is, the next thing we have to look at as lawyers and make a legal analysis of is liability. Who is responsible and why? That is a complex question in many cases. So, is it an individual defendant or a corporate defendant? Are there multiple parties who bear some responsibility for causing your harm or your injury? And it can be very simple and straightforward, such as when someone runs a red light and hits you, or it can be quite complex. And sometimes, for example, in a vehicular collision, perhaps you bear some responsibility as well. So, for example, maybe you were speeding, but the other party ran a stop sign. So maybe you bear some portion of responsibility for the harm caused. And so the analysis of liability can become quite complicated in certain types of cases, such as product liability cases, medical negligence cases, premises liability cases, dangerous condition cases, where we have to make an analysis of who all contributed to the causing of the harm. So it's a little bit complicated, and what happens is, to the extent that these different layers become involved, we often need to bring in expert witnesses to testify as to why something is dangerous or hazardous, or why it caused your injury or contributed to causing your injury. And unfortunately, that becomes increasingly time-consuming and very expensive in many cases. And in fact, if it's so expensive that it becomes prohibitive, in other words, if your injury isn't a serious one, then those cases are sometimes not financially worth pursuing for you or for us as your attorney. And we'll often reject those cases, but we'll at least give you the analysis as to why we're doing it. Other cases where there are very serious injuries involved, then it might make sense to spend $100,000 or $200,000 on various experts to get the case to trial. So it's part of the analysis that must be made in the beginning of the case to look at who's responsible, who's legally at fault, and why.